$2 trillion. That's how much dirty money moves through the global economy every single year. More than the GDP of Canada. And the amount actually seized? Around 1%. Not because criminals are geniuses, because the washing machine they built is hiding inside businesses you walk past every day. There are only about a dozen core tactics, and once you see them, you can't unsee them. This is every single one, from the crude to the nearly perfect. Here's what nobody tells you about dirty money. The problem isn't spending it, it's explaining it. A drug dealer with $2 million in cash can't buy a house, can't open a bank account, can't even deposit it without a federal form asking one deadly question. Where did this come from? That question has destroyed more criminals than any police raid. So how do you answer it without answering it? You run the money through 3 phases. Placement. Sneak the cash into the financial system. Layering. Bury its origin under so many transactions the trail goes cold. Integration. Pull it back out looking like clean, taxed, boring income. Placement, layering, integration. Every single tactic in this video, all 12, is just a different way to survive one of those 3 steps. The crude ones barely make it past the first. The brilliant ones make all 3 invisible. Let's start with the oldest trick that still works today. Deposit $10,000 in cash and the bank files a report to the government. Automatically. Every time. It's the law, and criminals know it better than you do. So picture $2 million in a duffel bag and one unbreakable rule standing in your way. How do you get it into a bank that snitches on every large deposit you make? You don't make large deposits. You make small ones. 9,400 here, 8,200 there. Spread across 10 people, 20 accounts, 30 different days. Each deposit small enough to stay silent. In the trade, the people making them are called Smurfs, and the tactic is structuring. Every individual deposit is perfectly legal. That's the genius of it. But that's also the flaw. Because banks stopped looking at the deposits and started looking at the pattern. Software now flags accounts that consistently land just under the limit, and the very thing that made structuring invisible, its suspicious tidiness, became the fingerprint that convicts. Ask the people who tried it. Staying under 10,000 is exactly how they got caught over 10,000 times. So structuring sneaks small money past the bank. But if you're moving real money, you don't sneak past the bank at all. You make the dirty cash vanish inside a business the whole neighborhood walks past every day. Somewhere near you, there's a business that's always open and never busy. A laundromat with no customers. A car wash on a street no one drives down. A restaurant with empty tables, and a cash register that somehow rings up thousands every single night. You've walked past it 100 times. You've never once suspected what it really does. Here's the problem every launderer faces. Cash is guilty until proven innocent. You can't explain a suitcase of it. But what if you owned a business where mountains of cash showing up is completely, boringly normal? That's the front. You buy a cash-heavy business, then blend your dirty money into its real earnings. The laundromat takes in $500 in quarters a day, so you report $2,000 and slip $1,500 of dirty cash into the deposit. On paper, business is booming. The dirty money walks in through the front door wearing a name tag that says revenue. And this isn't new. This is the original. Al Capone, pulling in millions from bootleg liquor, funneled it through actual laundromats, chains of them, cash washing through cash. That's not a clever comparison. That is where the word money laundering comes from. 100 years later, the tactic hasn't aged a day, because it exploits something that will never change. Some businesses are just supposed to be swimming in cash. But a front can only wash so much. Scale it too far, and one empty restaurant reporting $1 million starts to look absurd. So when the money gets truly big, criminals stop hiding it inside a business and start hiding it inside a company that doesn't even exist. Al Capone figured this out 100 years ago. If tracing that history is your kind of thing, Subscribing means you won't miss the next scheme we take apart. Now, back to the money. Investigators love following money because money leaves footprints. Every dollar has an owner, and every owner has a name. So here's the move that turns those footprints into a dead end. What if the owner had no name at all? What if, when the police finally traced the money to its owner, the owner was a company that had never sold anything, never hired anyone, and existed only as a line of text in a filing cabinet? That's a shell company. A business with no employees, no products, no office. Just a legal identity that can own money, hold property, and open accounts, all without a human face attached to it. On paper, the shell owns the millions, and you own the shell. Trace the cash, and you don't find a criminal. You find a document. But one shell is easy to crack, so you don't use one. You nest them. A company in Delaware, owned by a company in Cyprus, owned by a trust in the British Virgin Islands, owned by a shell in Panama. Each layer legal, each layer in a different country, under different rules, behind different privacy laws. By the time an investigator subpoenas the fourth jurisdiction, years have passed, and the trail ends where it always ends, at a mailbox in Delaware that receives paper for 200,000 other companies just like it. Here's the part that should bother you. None of this is hidden in some criminal underworld. You can create a shell company legally this afternoon for a few $100s. The tool that hides billions is the same one sitting on a government website, open to anyone. Shells hide who owns the money. But there's still one problem they don't solve: actually moving it across borders. And the biggest laundering channel on Earth solves that by hiding the money inside something completely ordinary: a shipment of goods. Every tactic so far has a ceiling. A laundromat can only wash so much. A shell company still has to move the cash somehow. But there's one channel that moves more dirty money than all the others combined. Hundreds of billions a year. And almost no one outside law enforcement has ever heard its name. It doesn't hide the money in a business or a company. It hides the money inside global trade itself. Here's the problem it solves. Moving money across borders is where launderers get caught. Wire transfers get flagged, cash gets seized. So what if the money never traveled as money at all? What if it crossed the world disguised as a shipment of goods? This is trade-based laundering, and the mechanism is almost insultingly simple. You ship a container of cheap ballpoint pens from one country to another. On the invoice, you write $1 million. The buyer, who's really your own partner, pays the million. To every bank and customs officer watching, a legitimate international sale just happened. But the pens were worth $500. The other $999,500? That was dirty money walking across the border wearing the costume of honest trade. And here's why it works better than anything else. Customs agents are trained to check paperwork. Is the shipment declared? Are the documents in order? They are not trained and don't have the resources to ask the one question that matters. Is this price honest? Over invoice, under invoice. Ship boxes that are half empty. Ship the same cargo twice on paper. The variations are endless. The biggest laundering method on Earth hides in the one place nobody's checking: the price tag. So far, every tactic has been about moving money and disguising it. But what if you didn't want to move it at all? What if you wanted it to sit somewhere, grow, and come out the other side even bigger and clean? Look up at the skyline of almost any major city: London, New York, Miami, Vancouver, and count the dark windows. Luxury towers, fully sold, sitting empty. No lights, no furniture, no one home. They weren't built to be lived in. They were built to hold money. Here's the problem real estate solves that nothing else can. Every tactic so far gets your money clean, but clean money still just sits there. What if you could clean it and have it quietly grow into more? What if the washing machine also paid interest? Property does exactly that. You buy an apartment with dirty money, sometimes through a shell company, so your name never appears. You hold it. Maybe you rent it out, generating clean, taxable income on top. Years later, you sell. And the money that comes back isn't dirty cash anymore. It's a legitimate capital gain, reported on your taxes, blessed by the system. The dirt didn't just wash off, it appreciated. And this is why entire neighborhoods in the world's richest cities have gone dark. The apartments were never homes competing for residents. They were vaults, standing on end, stacked 40 floors high, storing value for owners who may never set foot inside. The housing you can't afford and the laundering you can't see are, sometimes, the exact same buildings. Real estate takes patience, years of holding and selling. But some launderers want their money clean tonight. And for that, there's a place built to turn cash into a check while you watch, under bright lights, with a free drink in your hand. You're halfway through the full arsenal, and every tactic left gets harder to see than the last. If this is changing how you look at money, hit subscribe. That's the whole point of this channel, making the invisible obvious. Alright, the cash-to-check machine. A casino is the only place on earth where walking in with a bag of cash raises no eyebrows at all. Everyone's carrying money. Everyone's winning and losing. Chips move, cash flows, and the whole building is designed around one activity that launderers love more than gambling itself: turning cash into something the bank won't question. Here's the problem it solves. A check from a casino is clean. A duffel bag of cash is not. So how do you walk in with the dirty one and walk out with the clean one, without risking a cent at the tables? You barely gamble at all. You buy chips with your dirty cash, say 50,000. You sit down, play a few careful hands, lose a little, win a little, nothing that matters. Then you walk to the cage and cash out your chips. And the casino hands you a check for your winnings. On paper, you're a lucky gambler who had a good night. In reality, you converted dirty cash into a clean, traceable, tax-ready payout. And the few $100s you actually lost at the table was just the price of the wash. The irony is almost poetic. The house always wins. That's the entire business model of a casino. But when a launderer works the floor, the house becomes the one thing it was never supposed to be: a laundromat with better lighting, unknowingly doing someone else's washing. Every tactic so far lives in the physical world: buildings, chips, cargo, cash. But the newest generation of launderers doesn't touch any of it. They believe they've found something better: money that moves at the speed of the internet and answers to no bank at all. For a launderer, cryptocurrency sounded like the answer to every prayer. Money that moves across the planet in minutes. No bank to file a report. No name attached to a wallet, just a string of random letters and numbers. The moment crypto went mainstream, criminals thought they'd found the perfect washing machine. Some of them are now in prison because they believed exactly that. Here's the problem they were trying to solve, and the trap hidden inside it. Even with anonymous wallets, there's still a trail. One wallet sends coins to another. Follow enough hops, and you can connect the money to a person. So how do you break that chain completely? You use a mixer, also called a tumbler. It's a service that takes your coins, throws them into a giant pool with thousands of other people's coins, shuffles everything, and sends back the same amount from totally unrelated sources. Your dirty coins go in, clean-looking coins you've never touched come out. Layer that with chain hopping, swapping Bitcoin for other currencies over and over, and the trail seems to shatter into 1,000 pieces. But here's the twist that's putting launderers behind bars. That public blockchain they trusted? It records every transaction, forever, for anyone to read. Cash leaves no receipt. Crypto leaves a permanent one. Investigators now run software that follows coins straight through the mixers, and because the ledger never forgets, a transaction from years ago can still be unraveled today. The tool built to be untraceable became the most complete paper trail in the history of crime. Every method we've covered, from the laundromat to the blockchain, needs one thing to work: infrastructure. Banks, businesses, casinos, code. But the last tactic needs none of it. It's older than every bank on earth, it moves billions, and it runs on nothing but a phone call and a promise. There's a job posting that looks completely normal. Work from home, process payments, keep a small percentage. Thousands of people take it every year, thinking they've found easy money. What they've actually become is the most disposable part of a laundering operation: a money mule. And most of them don't realize it until the police are at the door. Here's the problem mules solve. Dirty money needs to move through accounts, but every account traces back to a real person who can be arrested. So what if that person wasn't the criminal? What if it was a stranger who volunteered and had no idea what they were carrying? That's the mule. Recruited online, sometimes romanced into it, sometimes just desperate for work. Money lands in their account, they forward it on, they keep a cut. When investigators pull the thread, it ends at them, not the person who actually owns the money. The mule takes the fall, and the real launderer never appears in the records at all. But the oldest tactic of all needs no accounts, no mules, no banks, nothing to trace. It's called Hawala, and it's been running for over 1,000 years. You hand cash to a broker in one country. He calls a broker in another, who hands the same amount to your recipient. No money crosses a border. Nothing moves through a bank. The two brokers simply settle up between themselves later, balancing favors built on trust. There's no wire, no record, no paper trail. Because on paper, nothing happened. A system older than modern banking still slips through the fingers of every institution built to stop it. So that's the full arsenal. 12 ways to make dirty money vanish, from a laundromat to a whisper between brokers. Every one of them now sitting in your head. Which leaves the one question that should be impossible to answer. If you know all 12, and the FBI knows all 12, why does almost none of it ever get caught? You now know every tactic. The laundromats, the shells, the fake invoices, the empty apartments, the mixers, the mules. So does the FBI. So does every major bank on Earth, with entire departments and billions of dollars aimed at exactly this. Which forces the most uncomfortable question of all. If everyone knows how it's done, why does over 99% of dirty money still get away clean? Because catching money laundering was never a knowledge problem. It's a volume problem. $2 trillion move through the system every year. The people trying to catch it? A few thousand investigators, buried under millions of transactions, each one requiring paperwork, subpoenas, cooperation across countries that don't always want to cooperate. It's not detectives versus criminals. It's a handful of people versus an ocean. And the ocean only has to hide, while the investigators have to prove. By the time they untangle one shell company in one country, 1,000 new transactions have already washed clean. And that's the real reason it keeps working. Not because the tricks are genius, you just learned all of them in 9 minutes. It's because the machine is simply too big to watch, and the few watching it are outnumbered 1,000,000 to 1. Knowing every tactic doesn't shut the machine down. It just means that now, when you walk past that empty laundromat, or read about a luxury tower full of dark windows, or see a headline about a company no one can trace, you won't see a mystery anymore. You'll see the machine, running in plain sight, exactly where it always was. That's every money laundering tactic, the whole machine, start to finish. The next scheme we dissect is already on the table, and if you want to see the trick before it sees you, there's only one thing to do. Subscribe, and I'll see you in the next breakdown.